On this episode of the Bronze Metalist podcast, we talk about Blackwater Park by Opeth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Bronze Metalist podcast. I'm Kale.
I'm OJ.
And today, like I said, we're going to be talking about the 2001 album Blackwater Park from Opeth. It's considered by, I think, a fair number of Opeth fans to be their best work.
Indeed.
I certainly think of it as such, and I'm really excited to be talking about that. I'm pretty sure we've not done an Opeth album either.
No.
I know I haven't done one
Right.
with you. I don't believe I ever did one with Jaron either, so...
It's a bit of a transitional record.
It is, yeah. It is kind of the beginning of the second part of their career, out of what I would say 3 parts of their career so far.
Right. You listen to it and you go, I know where this is going.
Yeah. It's we'll get into that a little
right.
bit more later.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, how was your 4th of July? It was last Wednesday when we met, before the 4th, so how was it for you?
Had a good time. Went to the there was a thing at Roosevelt Park over here. Took my son, my wife, and our daughter they were out of town. Well, no, my daughter was with friends. My wife was out of town, and so my son and I just bonded as father and son.
Nice.
Yeah, it was very good.
Nice.
Then they were all gone on Sunday, and I got to sit around and be stinky and eat weird food.
And you watched Longmire?
I did. I watched Longmire.
A whole bunch of Longmire. Such a shocking number of murders taking place in rural Wyoming.
It's weird.
It seems like half the population of Wyoming has been murdered.
Remind me to avoid Absaroka County.
Yeah,
entirely. The Cheyenne Reservation there. Woo, no.
Don't go to Absaroka County, Wyoming. Apparently, you will be dead. I don't know how anyone is left in that town or in the surrounding area, given how small Wyoming's population is.
Indeed, it's the smallest populated state in the union.
Like the amount of murders taking place in Florida, in like Dexter and CSI Miami,
right? Or Cabot Cove, Maine, with Murder She Wrote,
or Twin Peaks, Washington.
Exactly.
Actually, surprisingly few murders in Twin Peaks, Washington. in actual fact, just one very important one.
One extremely important one to the backbone of the show. Yeah.
Yeah, but I didn't do anything.
You didn't do anything. You said you were going to go visit with your family.
I was going to, and then when I called my mom, I was like, "Hey, I'm going to go down to the lake." She's like, "We're not at the lake."
Yeah.
It's like, "Oh no," because my dad's boat took a big old dump. So
really,
it was at home, so he could fix it.
What, like the motor, or is there a hole in it?
I don't recall. There was not a hole in it. Okay. I'm pretty sure it was. I feel like it was something to do with the battery, but I'm not entirely sure.
Okay.
It's a boat. There's always you're lucky. You're having a good year if you've had no problems with your boat.
Yeah. Or your 35-year-old motorcycle.
Or that's what you spent the last, I imagine, 4 hours doing.
Oh yeah, because I broke the clutch cable over the last week. Taking my son to the park, and I broke the clutch cable, and the brakes were a bit squishy. It was almost to where they didn't stop the thing.
Oh, that's bad.
So today I put on the new clutch cable. I spent $50 on it. It's a piece of cable, and then I bled out the brakes and I put in more DOT3 in there, and I got everything going good. And I hit the start button and went. Yeah. So I tried to take that, and it's got a strip screw, and I'm trying to take that apart and fix that. And my wife pulled in, and she could see that I was red and ready to throw shit. And she said, "Why don't you come in the house?"
You were getting to the Bill Burr phase.
I was getting old Bill Burr on it.
Oh, Billy Redface. Yeah,
that was that. And speaking of my wife, she has to undergo a procedure this week.
Oh, what for?
Well, let's just say there's going to be a camera on a rubber snake, and she can't eat any solid food over the next 36 hours.
That old chestnut.
Oh boy, yeah, she's looking forward to that.
They're not so bad.
Yeah.
You don't.
Not so bad. Well, how many of these have you had, Cal?
9. I have them check up their, twice a year. So I'm due for another one here in a few weeks. No, but I mean, like my obviously my dad had colonoscopy. I've talked about his experience with colorectal cancer previously, so The worst part is not being able to eat and having to shit constantly.
Well, yeah.
The laxatives they give you, that is the worst part of the procedure.
They said, no, we're going to give you this. You're going to have to take this stuff every 3 hours. And she said, well, I'll set an alarm. They said, nah, you won't need to set an alarm.
Yeah. Yeah,
You'll be alarmed already.
Yeah, take the day off.
She did.
Cause I think my dad mixed it with, because it's like usually like a powder or whatever that they give you, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like a syrup that you mix with water and vodka.
Yeah,
and,
water and vodka. I think my dad did like Powerade or something like that.
Yeah, but you can't have the red or purple Powerade.
Yeah,
everything but red or purple.
It was blue. Yeah, I think that he did, or maybe it was Gatorade. But
maybe
at any rate, yeah,
a sports drink of some sort.
A sports drink.
Yeah,
and that was that. From his perspective, other than the diagnosis that resulted from it, the worst part of the whole ordeal was, the constant shitting.
It's got to be a weird, almost a letdown when they come back clean. When they come back,
I went through all of that for you to find fuck all.
Not a polyp, not a single one.
Not a single polyp. Come on, I've been eating red meat daily for the last 35 years. Give me something.
I'm Canadian. That means she's Canadian.
What does it mean though?
Well, back bacon and beer. That's her diet.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's. Yeah, I remember. Oh, there was a name I was trying to think of. I can't remember if it was on the podcast or not. Dave Barry.
Dave Barry. I've read a bunch of Dave Barry books. Yeah, he's hilarious. He's from Miami.
There was a speech piece that I was doing that was from a Dave Barry book, and also in that same comedy book was him talking about the experience of getting a colonoscopy. And the prep experience there, and that was, and I had gotten this book around the time that my dad was going through all of this, and so I thought, oh, maybe I'll do that, but it ended up not being particularly translatable into a speech.
He gave a speech at they dedicated a new sewer lift to him in Grand Forks, North Dakota.
The Dave Barry sewer lift.
The Dave Barry sewer lift in Grand Forks, North Dakota. And it was dead middle of winter when he had to go dedicate it and give a speech in front of a crowd. And he said they applauded me, but it was just a bunch of whoop because everybody was in mittens.
Yeah. Why?
Why? I remember reading and it was hilarious. It was pants-crappingly funny, but it wasn't. I don't remember the details.
Yeah, I love Dave Barry. He's great. But some other things that have occurred recently here. I got my copy of Blood Mountain.
Nice.
On Friday, I think. Or
was it this? I thought you got it before that. I thought, oh no, that's right. You posted it to Instagram.
Yeah. Maybe that was Friday. I don't remember. At any rate, I also got my copies of the Expanse RPG.
Nice.
Which a while ago I was kind of sad because I thought I wasn't going to be able to get it because I thought it was just going to be a Kickstarter only thing for a while before maybe they hit stores. But turns out that you can just buy them on Amazon now.
Nice.
Which was fantastic for me.
You thought it was only going to be at Target or whatever.
No, this was the Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh, right. It was
that was the new.
You haven't got that one yet.
Essentials kit. No, I haven't gotten that one yet. The Expanse role playing game, the core book. Well, there's only the one book. And it was something I was very interested in. I'm really into the TV show. I want to get into the books. It's just there's a lot of them at this point.
Right.
Not a huge amount.
Not insurmountable.
But it's I'm not. I like reading. I'm just a very inconsistent reader, and so I feel like I simply would just get too distracted to be able to finish them. But if I were to get them maybe in audiobook form, it might be a bit more might be a bit more doable for me.
See, I used to have a hermitage when it came to reading. I mean, I would before I became husband, father, all that stuff. Well, I was already a father, but it was. They didn't live with me. That would have been irresponsible.
In your deadbeat days?
Yeah, my deadbeat days when I'd be in my little one-room apartment and I would actually get bed sores reading.
Oh, my God.
And read for 18 hours at a shot.
That's what I do watching fucking Critical Role now. Last month of my life trying to catch up on this show. 4-hour episodes. Jesus Christ. I used to be kind of like that. I was a very voracious reader and now that I, have matured a bit and there's all these, books that I feel like I'd be interested in reading, but I cannot I sat down. I managed to read all of At the Mountains of Madness. That's not very long, though.
No, it's not. None of his stuff is really long.
Yeah, no Lovecraft stuff is particularly long.
No.
It's a little awkward talking about Lovecraft now too, since like the information came out about him being a horrible racist.
Oh yeah, well he was a horrible person anyway.
Yeah, he was a complete dick, but he wrote some spooky stuff.
Well, yeah,
and is a huge influence on a lot of creators that I really like. Like Guillermo del Toro is a massive Lovecraft fan, and he's a great dude and makes great movies. So
indeed,
your hat,
my
Bill,
head hit. I didn't mean to do that.
Your hat, Bill, hit the pop filter there.
I was just nodding in agreement.
You were just very enthusiastically nodding. But yeah, I hope one day, once I've consumed the book a little bit, or the rule book here a little bit, to maybe run an Expanse game for something.
That'd be cool.
I'm not entirely sure how I would do it.
Would you get to play? Do you actually get to play the characters from the story, or are they different characters in that universe?
I think they're different characters. There are stat blocks for the Rocinante crew and Bobby and Christian Avasarala as well.
Really?
So I get to be an extremely foul-mouthed old Indian woman if I'm GMing and someone encounters Christian Avasarala for some reason. I get to do my best Shora Ashlagadu impression.
And the funny thing is that they toned it down for her in the show.
Well, especially in the first 2 seasons, when was before the point where sci-fi started becoming like before sci-fi stopped giving a fuck.
Yeah.
At least towards their advertisers, because they're a cable channel, so they don't have to adhere to FCC guidelines,
right?
But they are beholden to their advertisers, and apparently they worked out a deal for a lot of their shows where it's like, yeah, do you care if we say the F word?
Like, no.
Okay, well, we're gonna do that. So and the Expanse, the show The Magicians, and a whole bunch of other sci-fi programs.
But the actress as well didn't care for the.
Yeah, she's not very foul-mouthed in real life. But then I saw a great interview clip of her where they were talking about her foul-mouthedness, and then she like went off into a tangent and then giggled afterwards. But yeah, the character is Avasarala is extremely foul-mouthed, and I love her for that, because it's just this adorable old Indian grandma in a beautiful sari, and she's just swearing like a sailor.
What about Amos? I mean, can you be?
I don't know if I don't think you can be Amos. He's got, like I said, he's got stat blocks in there. You could do your best to emulate him. You could be that guy. You could be that guy.
Sometimes I try to be that guy.
You're not that guy.
I'm not that guy.
I'm that guy.
Yeah.
Coming up this weekend, I have a what I imagine will be an arduous remote to do.
Now, did they tell you? Are they going to pay you extra for that?
I don't know.
I assume you're working on a Saturday, so they're going to at least comp you for the day.
Well, yeah, because it's a full day.
Yeah.
We're going to be out there for longer even than we do when we do remote broadcasts at the state fair.
Right, like an 8-hour day.
Yeah, twice as long as any of the fair days, because fair days are 2 to 6.
Right.
And yeah, we're going to be out there from 9 to 5 whole time at this.
What do I make a living?
Yeah, it's. I mean, it's the sort of thing that only comes up, once a year or whatever. So it's fine. But it's like, all right, well, let's jump on into this. This will be interesting at the very least.
Yeah, going out to Stanley, North Dakota.
Yep. Speaking of that burp that I made, we got Trout Slayer.
Trout Slayer is the beer.
Big Sky Brewery. It's a wheat pale ale. I'm honestly not sure I've really had much wheat beer that I enjoy. Like, I've had wheat beers before, and I wasn't particularly fond of them, but this is good.
This is good.
Maybe it's the pale ale part.
Yeah. Well, and the funny thing is when I saw it, and it's one of those things where sometimes you just buy it because of what it's called, and I saw this, and I'm imagining, because it's called Trout Slayer, I'm imagining a world where you're standing by a stream with Tom and Carrie, and they're well-versed in many things, but they don't know anything about, like, nature or the animal kingdom, and so they're looking at the fish in your hands going, that's all rainbow colored. What is that? Oh, well,
this is a Trout Slayer. See, what I was imagining is a world where all of the members of Slayer were fish. They were all trout, and everyone in the crowd is fish, and it's SpongeBob basically. If Slayer were in SpongeBob, they would have to be sea trout, I guess. Sea trout are a thing, right?
Sea trout, I think. I think it's just freshwater trout. I think that's a freshwater animal.
I feel like there are sea trout. I don't know.
Also, at the fair, did I tell you good news I got today? Every year I get to go out on the first day of our state fair.
Oh, yeah.
And I get to try every single food there for free. And then I judge it. I pass judgment on which one's the best, the top three, actually. And then, of course, the end of it, I'm sweating grease.
Yeah.
And I'm
about to keel over.
I'm panting. And then, I mentioned it to the boss, and he called me into his office and said, well, you tapped on the window. So the boss wants to see you. And that was the news he had. He said, got you in, you're going. Yeah!
Oh, that's great.
I'm going to eat some deep fried cheese and lots of it.
How can you even afford to eat lots of it's free. What I mean, how can you physically afford to eat lots of any of them?
I look at it as a challenge. I mean,
my God.
There's always like at least 2 funnel cakes, which is deep fried like batter.
Well, yeah.
And then there's usually like a plate of nachos that's the size of your torso. That's got like a buffalo sauce and jalapenos on it, and then there's what's this is cream corn on a stick. Oh my God, deep fried Oreos and yeah.
How do you space that out?
How do you space it out?
Yeah, do you like take? Do you take your time? Is it over the course of
It's over the course of like 2 hours.
Still,
yeah.
All of the food at the fair over the course of 2 hours.
All right, well,
or is it selected food at the fair?
It's selected. It's most of the vendors. Actually, it's a majority of the vendors enter this. But what I have a tendency to do is I will take several big bites, enough, and then when they're not looking, I pitch it. I mean,
okay. I was going to say you don't
eat the whole thing.
Yeah, there's no way you could eat the whole thing of all of them.
And I always kind of look them in the eye too, and here's a full portion. I go, I could share this with the other. I'm eating
it's fair
15
food.
Different things right now. In
do
2 hours.
Do you know what I'm here for? Yeah. Please.
Don't kill me.
That does sound like fun.
It's a great time.
I would probably. I mean, I can eat a lot, but I feel like I would not be able to eat all of that. That's got to be hard. Like the last one has got to be pretty tough, right?
Yeah, it usually is, and it's weird how many times the last one has won. I mean,
because it's the freshest in your mind, and you're probably just going, "Thank fuck, I'm done eating."
But you take score as you go. You have a score sheet, and you rate it. You rate 3 different categories, and
but just like how accurately can you really? You've got all the tastes of all of the other ones, going. It's like how accurately can you really rate it? Do you palate cleanse at all?
A little
in
bit.
Between,
like maybe get a cracker.
There you go.
I remember one year it was the meat and potato parfait that won. That was really good.
Meat and potato parfait.
Yeah, it was ground beef and the potatoes, and then gravy, and then meat and the potatoes, and then ground beef and then gravy, and then a cherry tomato on top.
That actually sounds pretty good.
It actually is.
Was this in a cup?
It's pretty slamming.
Was this in like a milkshake style cup?
Yeah, it was in like what you get a peanut butter parfait in, like at the Dairy Queen. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds really good. That sounds really, really good.
Actually,
I'm not much for I don't go big on gravy, but that sounds fantastic.
Yeah, it is. Well, that's fantastic.
Speaking of things that sound fantastic, album time.
Sure.
All right. So, like I said, we're talking about Blackwater Park by Opeth. They are a Swedish. I guess now you could mostly call them progressive rock.
Right.
I think Wikipedia sort of splits the difference and calls
progressive
them
death.
Wikipedia for their current era splits the difference between their different styles and calls them progressive metal.
Right.
Just to there's a lot of stuff that's metal. All of it's progressive, and this stuff is more rock. But we'll just call it all progressive metal.
But let's throw their entire career into one basket.
Yeah, and
shake
it
up and see what falls out.
Yeah, and it was progressive metal.
Yeah.
They're from Stockholm, Sweden. Like I said, this album came out in 2001. They were founded in 1989.
Right.
Vocalist, I believe it was David Eisenberg. I believe
the original vocalist.
The original vocalist. The founding member, the creator of Opeth, that left a year after it was founded, and ever since then it's been Michael's baby.
Yeah.
But sometime very soon after the band was founded. He asked Michael Ackerfeld to play bass in his band. Michael Ackerfeld had been in a different band. He was 16 years old at the time.
Yes, he was.
and he asked him to.
And he's younger than me.
Yeah. Asked him to play in their band, and he was like, all right. He was 16, but he probably still, all right, I'll go play in your band.
Okay, yes.
Very low. He's got a very deep voice.
I wonder if he'd been through the change already at 16.
I feel like, I imagine he had.
He was already.
He already had the mustache, too.
Sure.
But
and all 3 testicles.
And all 3 testicles. Yeah, so when he introduced Michael Ackerfeld to the rest of the band, they were like, who the fuck is this kid? You didn't tell us. And all of them promptly quit. All of them except for David and Michael promptly quit. And so they sort of reformed the band, essentially. And about a year later, David Eisenberg left the band after some sort of creative differences, essentially. Right. And Michael was kind of like, well, do we want to keep doing this? And so over the next year or so, they sort of workshopped what they were doing. Originally, they were a death metal band. And they started workshopping different sounds and eventually decided to try for something that had a little bit more going on. And that sort of launches Opeth's, the Opeth's first chapter of their career, which was
in the 90s.
Progressive death metal that was much more death metal leaning. Still not, they didn't make heavy use of blast beats or anything like that. And there's still a lot of the elements that would follow them throughout the rest of their career of both, fast, heavy passages, but also lots of acoustic guitar and mellotron and things like that.
Like vocal harmonies.
Yeah, vocal harmonies. Michael Ackerfeld is got this wonderful sort of two-tone voice where it's either, especially on their metal works, where he has this extremely intense. It sounds intense. It's sort of strange to describe his growls in the sense that it just sounds like it's just sort of coming out of him. It doesn't sound like he's pushing it out very hard. It just sounds like it sounds healthy in a sense.
Yeah,
like it's not like he's pushing too hard for it. And it's not a particularly visceral or sort of painful
sounds natural
sort of sound. Yeah, it sounds natural.
Yeah,
and like I feel like his very his default scream is this very deep growl, and I feel like since he has just such a deep voice already, that that's just the sound that comes out because he has a very, very deep voice, and also a very beautiful, clean singing voice.
Beautiful,
just this deep baritone, and he can go up a little bit. He has a little bit of range.
He can get into that tenor range fairly easily. Yeah,
and that goes for his screams as well. He can do higher pitched screams as well. He uses those a bit more sparingly, but a lot of acoustic guitar, progressive elements certainly. I heard Michael Ackerfeld describe essentially the idea of they were one of the very few bands in that period that were doing what you would call progressive death metal in the sense that they were more or less, instead of doing progressive death metal where they sort of increased the intensity, like you could call maybe like Sound of Perseverance or something like that. You could maybe call that progressive death metal,
right? Like
Death's last album, but that's almost they didn't change in intensity. They didn't dial anything back. Whereas Opeth is kind of a death metal that is dialed back a little bit for the progressive elements. And so he kind of compared them to like a death metal Dream Theater almost, which is a high comparison, but it works because they're Opeth. And so they were in this first period of their career, and it was still, it was basically death metal with acoustic guitar in it occasionally. And then Blackwater Park came out in 2001, and this was sort of the start of a new period for them.
Right.
That would last until 2008 with Watershed, which was the last progressive death metal album that they put out before they started making progressive rock albums, essentially.
And you can definitely see in this album that it's headed in that direction.
Yeah, and it was, I think, 2 albums after this where they made their first progressive rock album, and then they went back to making a couple more progressive death metal albums until 2013. They put out I can't remember the album they put out in 2013, but that was, I think, their first proper progressive rock album. That then Sorceress came out in 2016, which was another one. So it seems like they're committed to this path, and I haven't really listened to a lot of their new progressive rock sound. I think now I've developed my music interests a little bit more than when I first discovered Opeth, so I might find that a bit more palatable, because at the time I was like, wow, this is so awesome.
Sure.
I'm so, depressed that they're not still making stuff like this.
Mm-hmm.
But they'd been doing it for 20 years almost.
Already, yeah.
Yeah, they'd been doing stuff like that for 20 years already, and it's like, yeah, okay.
We've done it.
Yeah, they've done it, and they did it a lot, and they did it very well. And I think Blackwater Park is probably the best they ever did it, in a few ways. So,
I'll admit I actually hadn't really given this a listen.
Really?
Prior to this,
had you listened to much Opeth?
not a lot of Opeth. I hadn't really spun a lot of it, and this really is actually kind of in my wheelhouse. There's a lot of bands like this that I really like.
Yeah.
I don't know why I haven't hit this one.
Yeah, it's kind of surprising because they've been around for a while and they're a big name. And
Yeah.
It's interesting that you haven't listened to it much. Another interesting thing around Blackwater Park is this was really the first album that they toured extensively for.
Really?
In their entire history up to that point, they made very sporadic live appearances. They didn't really, they weren't a touring band.
Unannounced stuff. I mean, just
possibly,
just
but
popping
just
up
shows now and then, probably in Sweden.
Local coffee shop.
Yeah, local. Well, I mean, it's a coffee shop in Sweden, so
it works.
That could work, honestly.
Yeah.
But off of the back of Blackwater Park, they off the back of the Blackwater Park.
Yep.
Off of the back of the Blackwater Park.
Well, play ball. All right.
It turns into a auctioneer chant. But off the back of this album, they did their first world tour and have been embarking on stuff like that ever since then. This was, in many ways, a turning point in their career where, things really started to change for them. They'd been successful and well regarded before Blackwater Park, but...
and just for the record here, I was in a metal band that did pop up at coffee shops every now and then.
Really?
Yeah.
You actually played at coffee shops?
Yeah.
Like,
2 different ones in Minot.
During the daytime, or was this, it's a metal show at a coffee shop?
Morning rush. No, it was no, it was in the evening. It was planned. It was
okay.
We'd have like metal bands come in and
because I was gonna say it wasn't like a nowadays Starbucks type thing where it's here's this random acoustic artist from around town and he's gonna play while all of you are on your MacBooks or whatnot.
No, we had this is before MacBooks. This is at a place called Sweethearts.
Sweethearts
here in
Sweethearts Coffee Shop.
Sweethearts Coffee Shop, and now here's Warhead, and different bands like that showing up, and our band would be on stage, and they would pay us in coffee. We didn't get actually. Give me a quadruple shot.
I need some energy.
We have our quadruple shots. Go on stage, have a 20-minute show.
There you go.
With our 50-minute set.
Just playing at triple speed. What's the BPM on that?
Holy shit, I don't remember these guys being so thrashy.
Jesus, this is grindcore at this point. Blackwater Park was a very big deal for them. My question for you now, I suppose, is does this slap?
It slaps, but just barely.
Yeah. I wrote for this. It's a very qualified slap, I feel.
Yeah.
In the sense that it's Opeth, so it's
good,
kind of slow.
And there's a lot of introspective parts in here.
Yes.
And let me say, listening to this while I was repairing my motorcycle probably helped me not to pick up the motorcycle and throw it through a window.
If you had been listening to some Pig Destroyer, you would not have a bike anymore.
I would not. It would be
it would be in pieces.
Good news is I got that script screw out. Bad news is I got it out. It's in my colon.
You show Jesus. Oh wait, you're like that kid in that viral video where his parents canceled his World of Warcraft subscription and he's tried to shove that remote up his butt. You seen that one?
I've not. No,
that was like an early episode of Tosh.0, I think.
Jeez.
There's a period in my life where I watched a lot of Tosh.0.
Sure.
I was a teenager. That makes a lot of sense.
It makes you can relate to Daniel Tosh better when you're
a teenager. Yeah. Yeah, it's a very qualified sort of slap. It's like it's just a little too relaxing in most of it to really say that it slaps. Because and another thing with the slap is I feel like this is just a little too rich to slap. It's a little too.
It's a rich slap.
Yeah, it's not fun enough to really slap. Mm-hmm. It's a very great album.
It's great,
but it's not a fun album.
Right.
I would say this is not a fun kind of make you want to get up and bounce and go around. And this is a you sit there and kind of go.
You can't form a mosh pit while really listening.
Yeah,
to this.
yeah. I don't think there's been many mosh pits at Opeth concerts.
Right.
Certainly not anymore.
Or a wall of death or anything.
Or a wall of death at an Opeth concert. Maybe at a Bloodbath concert.
Sure.
When Ackerfeld was still doing vocals for Bloodbath, but what was I can't remember exactly what I was going to say. Oh, the most recent release from Opeth though does show that they are still performing songs from their earlier eras live. They did a show at Red Rocks in Colorado. Recorded.
I've never been to Red Rocks.
Neither have I. Let's go to a show at Red Rocks. Let's go down to Colorado and go to a show at Red Rocks.
We don't care what it is. We get there, it's like Dave Matthews, and well,
man, okay, I'm sure, fine, whatever. Big Fish at Red Rocks, not Big Fish. Big Fish, the musical at Red Rocks Amphitheater. That was in my head because we have the
sure just
the summer
fish.
The college summer theaters doing that.
They are, yeah.
Right now, I was
you were just thinking of fish.
I was thinking of real big fish.
Gotcha.
I was thinking of real big fish. Live at Red Rocks, real big fish.
What? Is it ska? Okay. All
Aquabats.
Right.
Aquabats at Red Rocks.
I have an Aquabat CD.
It's okay. or you know what? Jimmy Buffett at Red Rocks.
Jimmy Buffett's been dead for like 40 years. No, I'm thinking of...
Who the fuck are you talking?
I'm not thinking
what sort of Mandela effect bullshit is this?
I'm thinking of Jim Croce. Jimmy Buffett's fine. He's alive and well and eating cheeseburgers.
God, you just killed Jimmy Buffett. You son of a bitch.
Sorry, man. No.
He's a national treasure. How fucking dare you?
Rip Torn is dead.
Yes, Rip Torn is dead.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, but...
Have you ever looked up Rip Torn and having a fist fight with who's the famous filmmaker?
No.
They're making a movie and why am I spading this out? And the cameras kept rolling while he was beating the living shit out of the director.
No, I haven't.
Yeah. They were actually having a fist fight. They got it on camera.
I'll throw out directors. Stanley Kubrick.
It was not Stanley Kubrick. No, you're not going to get there, man.
Francis Ford Coppola.
Was it directed Wonder Woman?
Akira Kurosawa. Woody Allen. Roman Polanski. The best part, though, is Roman Polanski deserved it.
Norman Mailer, that's who it was.
That's a name I don't recognize.
Yeah.
What? Before you killed Jimmy Buffett.
Sorry for killing Jimmy Buffett.
What I was going to say was I would totally see Jimmy Buffett
at Red Rocks. Yeah, especially, so would I.
Also, it's in Colorado, so you could go to a weed store and buy Jimmy Buffett's weed.
And go smoke it while you're watching Jimmy Buffett.
Buy one of Jimmy Buffett's weed vapes and smoke it while you're watching Jimmy Buffett live on stage.
That would be one to check off on the bucket list right there. That'd be awesome.
You mean the Buffett list? Did you tee that one up for me?
No, I didn't. I didn't mean to do that.
I'm very happy to have finally pulled one on you.
I'm glad. Thank you.
But yeah, Opeth was live at the Red Rocks. They made a live album.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of songs from their earlier albums on there, and Michael still... I had heard some people say that Michael's, harsh vocals are not as good as they used to be.
Really?
He sounded pretty great. On that one, although I mean it was a recorded, a recorded live show, so it's possible he kind of really took care of himself beforehand and really concentrated and tried to make sure he sounded the best he possibly could.
Like a lot of honey and lemon.
Yeah, it's a possibility there, but the other thing is he's younger than you, I guess, but he is he is getting older.
Sure, well, yeah.
And he's been doing this for a while. He's been doing this since he was 16, so that'll take a toll on a person. But I listened to the live album and it sounds great. I think it's like Titan's Graveyard or something like that. That was the name they gave to the live album, and it sounded great. Michael Ackerfeld is also like surprisingly well humored. Like he sounds like he sounds like almost like a very deep Swedish Werner Herzog when he talks, but like he seems to smile and joke a lot more than some. Like we watched an interview with Gall.
Yeah.
Gall's Norwegian, but still, it's like Gall was just so precise,
very precise,
and thoughtful, and just thought very hard about every question before he answered it.
I feel like he also has a good sense of humor. Gall does.
Probably.
He probably has to.
Like there's no way I feel like but it's the thing with Gall is just like it's the sense of humor is probably something that only comes out around like people who are his friends.
Right.
I feel like he never shows that to anyone else.
Yeah,
He just
and even his friends, he'll say something that's really funny, and then it'll take a few minutes, and everyone will go, "Oh, joke."
I can imagine. Yeah.
Okay, that was hilarious.
That was so funny, Gall.
That was so dry. There's dust on me now, but it's hilarious.
I am glad you got my joke.
I thought it was very
With
funny.
his super pointy beard. So the score, thankfully, this is one of those albums that's well known enough to where there was just a bunch of stuff on Wikipedia that I could look at.
Yeah.
So the score balanced out to about 89.8, which is a pretty good score. A lot of
high
these
beat.
ones, they always average out to about a 90. And for this one especially, it would have been much better, but Sputnik Music gave it a 3.2 out of 5.
Really?
There was multiple 100s on the listing on Wikipedia for review scores, but Sputnik Music gave it a 3.2 out of 5, which just seems a little odd. That's a 62. It's still a positive rating, but it's like that's not a 62. That's a yeah, it is. It's a 64. It's a 64.
Well, it's a 7 out of 10, isn't it? No, 3.5.
It was a 3.2 out of 5.
3.2 out of 5.
I might have misspoke when I first said that. 3.2 out of 5. So that's
64.
64, which is really kind of brought the average down. You got to have the outlier, I guess.
You do. You gotta have the Russian judge.
Got to have the one Russian judge. That's accordingly.
Yeah,
Sputnik
Sputnik.
Music,
Yeah.
and the Russian judge.
Yeah.
Apparently, they didn't care for it all that much, but. So, what is your favorite song on the album?
My favorite song, I think, is the Funeral Portrait.
Okay.
I really enjoyed that song.
I have to go with The Drapery Falls.
Good song as well.
Drapery Falls is the song that introduced me to Opeth.
Oh, okay.
I remember I saw could you hand me the bottle opener, by the way?
Oh, here you go.
I remember I saw it was a thread on Reddit, and I think it was on I feel like it was on just the general music thread or something like that. But it was I'm looking for new interesting chill things to listen to, or or it was like beautiful. I want your beautiful music, and someone was like, this is The Drapery Falls by Opeth.
Sure.
There's going to be some some growls and harsh vocals on it, but give it a try. It's a really beautiful song. And I listened to that and was like, holy shit, this is really cool. I had heard of Opeth, but I hadn't really listened to them. Wow, this is really interesting, and so I started listening to Blackwater Park a lot. This is an album I've listened to many times.
Sure.
And
now you have it on vinyl.
And now I have it on vinyl, and I greatly enjoy it almost every time. It's really good. It's really good.
It's really good, yeah.
And that's
really good.
That's as eloquently as I can put it. I'm a professional.
I'm a broadcaster. I can broadcast.
I can use my words to describe things. Yeah, it's just it's so well produced.
Oh, very well produced.
It's wonderful. It's the sort of thing you can really dig into on multiple listens and listen to different facets of it. Sort of the production that happened that was interesting is they let's see here. Well, it was produced trying to gather myself here.
Ago.
It was produced a long time ago in a galaxy far away. So part of the production was done by Steven Wilson, but they recorded it and engineered it at the let's see, they don't name the studio. Frederick Nordstrom's studio.
At Nordstrom's.
In Gothenburg.
In Gothenburg.
In Gothenburg.
There's a lot that sounds like Gothenburg sound on this.
Yeah. Well, that's because it's
Swedish.
It's Frederick Nordstrom.
Sure.
And he's the guy that does all of that.
Sure.
One of the guys. There's a partner of his that he engineers a lot with. I can't remember the other guy's name, but they engineered together a lot and engineer and produce together for a ton of bands. And so they always kind of have their hallmarks to it, and they definitely left some marks of that experience. They were recording at the same time as Soilwork.
Oh, really?
And it was interesting because Opeth had been around for a while, but they were in there, and Ackerfeld just mentioned it was like we felt like children just watching, the guys from Soilwork do their thing. It was like, wow, these guys know what they're doing. Shit. And they had they came in, they had songs ready to go and stuff, but things got changed in the recording process, and as it almost always does.
Sure.
There are things that need to be adjusted, but it's like, yeah, we had our big long tracks ready to go. And that's one thing that I've never understood is when bands go into the studio without almost anything ready. Where it's like, yeah, we don't really know, what we're doing when you write in the studio.
Right.
I don't understand how people do that. I don't understand how anyone can afford to do that unless you're like really, really successful.
You own a studio.
Yeah. It's like I don't understand how people can afford to do that.
Like we recorded an album at what was Meyer Studio in Bismarck, is now Makoche, if it's still working. But we had like 10 hours. We had 10 hours to record an 8-song album, and so we had to show up very prepared.
Yeah, you have to be very practiced. Maybe have scratch tracks ready to go that you recorded on a tape recorder or whatever.
Right.
I remember that what sort of introduced me to that idea was I watched a Architects documentary. They were being produced by Frederick Nordstrom. The first album they went up to Sweden to produce, and they had decided that they were going to have demos of every song.
Sure.
They wanted to make a demo of every single song to take up to Sweden so they would be ready to go. I think they booked 2 weeks or something like that. Not 2 weeks end-to-end 24-hour days, but they had sort of a total of 2 weeks sort of sprawled out to record the album, but they had everything ready to go and vocals, scratch tracks ready to be like, this is kind of what we have, and we'll play along to this to help us practice and that sort of thing. But and it was like, yeah, that seems like the most logical way to do it. And then I hear about bands, we came into the studio
we didn't know what we were gonna do.
Yeah, with the whole Bohemian Rhapsody thing. I haven't seen that movie yet, but I've heard there's a bunch of scenes of them just walking into the studio and be like, we have nothing. Let's go. They wrote all of these songs they wrote every one of these hit songs in the studio in a blast of inspiration.
Sure.
And it's like, I don't know how much of that I really believe.
Yeah, I mean, that's really walking a tightrope right there when you do that. It's hey, we're good enough. You have to really be confident.
Yeah, you have to be extremely confident and also very talented.
Very talented to walk in and say, hey, we're going to make an album. What are you going to do? Well, you'll see.
We're going to figure it out.
We'll see, too. Yeah.
Yeah, the studio is not where jam sessions should happen.
You've heard of, who David Coverdale is, right?
I don't think so.
The band Whitesnake. You've heard of Whitesnake?
I've heard of Whitesnake.
Apparently David Coverdale is known he's legendary in the music industry for being able to walk into a studio, lay down all of his tracks a single time, and then just go catch lunch.
And then he just leaves.
Yeah, he's done.
That's really cool.
Yeah, he did that in the middle. I remember seeing a documentary a long, long time ago, a band called Def Leppard. You've heard of them?
Oh, a little band called Def Leppard.
Yeah, they were doing the in-studio writing thing with Jeff Mutt Lang. And they were doing years and years of in-studio work, costing millions and millions of dollars.
God.
And in the middle of them going, I don't know. Like David Coverdale came walking in, get the fuck out of the way. I'm going to go lay down my tracks.
Yeah.
And he does it. He
People are working here.
Yeah, okay, now I've got tea. Now you can go in. Fuck off.
Fuck off now. And yeah, it's like... it's just it seems so unprofessional. It's like have your shit ready to go. This
Right.
is your job.
Mm-hmm.
This is your fucking job.
I actually had, when we went to the booth like that, I actually had one song that I didn't know, I didn't have any lyrics for. I've always had a hard time writing lyrics. I'm good. I express myself through music.
Yeah.
And then I write down words, and the words look like, I don't.
This is
like-
bullshit.
This is bullshit. This is stupid lyrics. And so they said, "Okay, now sing." And I had a microphone and headphones on, and everybody looking at me through the window, and said, "Now sing the parts." Fuck. And then I just made shit up as I went along and sang it in key, and then remembered what I sang, and then did harmonies.
Perfect. The Rob Scallon method. Yeah. Have you seen those videos of him making an entire album in 24 hours?
No.
Like he does these challenges where it's like make a song in 15, make a full song in 15 minutes.
Sure.
It's, guitar, bass, drums, and he did one with a friend of his where they made an entire album in 24 hours. And so they would just come up with lyrics on the fly and then have to remember what they sang. And it's a little bit easier now with digital playback and stuff like that, where you can you hear
we
yourself.
Didn't have that. We were recording on Mylar.
Yeah, so that's a bit more complicated.
A bit. And it charges $80 to burn what was called a compact disc.
What's a compact disc? I'm sorry, I don't know what those are.
Tell me, Grandpa, what's a compact disc?
Grandpa, what are these CDs? Son, CDs are for fools. I only used mini discs.
I recorded on wax cylinder.
I did it all on Laserdisc.
Well, I know, was it Primus did an entire album on what is essentially VHS tape.
It's fantastic. I got what did I get reminded of there? Oh, I got reminded of the movie, a little movie called Once, starring Glenn Hansard and Marketa Irglova, and their studio experience. Just a lot of reminded me a lot of that, where it was. They had practiced a little bit, but really Glenn's character was the only one who knew precisely what they were doing, and so they went into the studio, and the bassist and the guitarist are doing their thing and tuning instruments, and the drummer is in the drum room and has no idea what he's doing because he's in. It's mostly a live room, but the drum kit is isolated, and the engineer is just sitting there behind the board going, "Fuck, these people have no idea what they're doing." At least I'm getting paid.
Yeah.
And then they start playing the first song, and he's sort of sitting back, and he's just got his coffee, and I think he starts reading something while the recording is going on, and then he starts listening, and he kind of leans over the board and just, oh, this is actually worth my time. Okay, and starts. I love that movie. Once is such a weird movie in the sense that it is not well shot at all. There is not really any of what I would describe as beautiful cinematography. It's all handheld, a little shaky. It was on relatively consumer grade equipment, and so the video quality is not particularly good. But the acting just feels so natural, and the music is so good, and the chemistry between the stars is so great that it sort of just the cinematography fades into the background as much as it can.
It almost becomes a periphery character. Is that what you're saying? Sort of like a...
In a sense where it's like you can ignore the cinematography.
Okay.
You can, because that's the hardest thing about any movie to ignore, I feel like, is the camera work, because that's how you're experiencing whatever world the movie is trying to put you into. But
for the reason I barfed after I watched Blair Witch Project.
I'm surprised you're not a fan of that movie.
To me,
it seemed like such an OJ movie to like. To me, it seemed like that. It seemed like you'd be a Blair Witch guy.
Well, okay. I mean, there are a lot of circumstances around why I didn't care for it a lot much. I mean, I guess I was severely hungover, and I'd taken care of that hangover by going over to my friend Dave's house, and he threw a tarantula at me.
Oh.
But it turned out it was just his tarantula had recently molted, and it was just the exoskeleton. And then he said, "Here, smoke this." And then I had a date to go watch Blair Witch Project. And so I was hungover, and I was high, and I was... and not in the mood, and then and then also I had this other guy that I knew who had kept harping on me that it was real found footage, and I was trying.
He was one of the people that fell for it.
And I kept explaining to him, said, no, that's the gimmick. It's supposed to be like this. They did that on purpose. No, fuck you. It's found footage. I said, no, it's not.
Well, because the found footage wasn't a genre yet.
No, it wasn't.
That's what Blair Witch was responsible for creating.
Right.
Found footage genre of horror movies. I'm sure it had been used for something else at some point, but like... yeah, like found footage horror films became a thing after Blair Witch. But,
right. Yeah, so I don't know. Maybe if I watched it again, I'd feel better about it, but I haven't seen it since I saw it in the theater.
But yeah, see it sober and just in a good mood.
Yeah.
And I feel like maybe you're... I honestly, I haven't watched it all the way through.
Really?
I've only seen bits and pieces just because it's not a thing... Like, I'm sure I could find it just somewhere to watch. Somewhere
easily.
Streaming pretty easily. It's a pretty popular movie, but... it's just so ingrained in the lexicon that of films these days, especially horror movies, that I've seen all kinds of clips from it and stuff like that, and people talking about it.
Sure.
But like it's not a movie that was ever on AMC or some on the TV.
Well, there's a lot of cussing in it, and
it's
without it, they try to bleep it out or change it, and it's weird.
Yeah, and the format just does not work to be played on TV. Maybe you could play it on like HBO or like what is that? Is it Chiller or there's a horror TV channel? I can't remember what it's called.
I've never paid a cable bill. I have no idea.
Yeah, neither have I. Okay, we really got off track there. We're pretty much. I think we talked mostly what we wanted to say about the album. It's an album that I really enjoy, and I'm glad that you liked it.
I liked it as well. I did.
So what metal would you give it?
I need to give it a few more listens.
Okay.
And not when I'm doing something angrily.
Okay.
So I'm going to give it a silver for now.
All right.
And then it's probably going to creep up to gold as I listen to it more.
Yeah, I'm giving it a gold out the gate.
Right.
You keep on hitting
it's like
the pop filter.
I've never worn a goddamn hat before. What's going on?
You keep on hitting that. You've done that like 5 times.
I guess it's because I'm backed up because
you're trying
to get out of the sun.
The sun because of my.
So I've got myself in a corner over here
because of my partially melted blinds.
Your melted blinds.
That even if I brought them down would not block the sun.
No, they wouldn't.
You're in the part where they're melted.
Yeah, that part is drooping.
That specific part would let sunlight through. My life is a mess.
Well, I'm going to continue filling in for the morning show. This week. Yeah. So I'm doing that. I get to be by myself for several hours every morning.
Yeah.
Always
First
sucks.
thing in the morning, starting at 6 in the morning.
And then someone pulls up and I'm going to put on pants. And then
Could be at a TV station where you never have to put on pants.
That actually happened to me once.
Really?
Yeah, it was during the fair, and it was at a time when I was doing part-time, and so I was on the pop station that didn't go out to the fairgrounds.
Okay.
Because they used to actually take the whole studio out there, because it was everything was on carts. They couldn't do it digitally. There was no go to my PC or any crap like that. So everything had to be out on site, and if I was like on the country station, I had to be there from midnight to 6 o'clock in the morning.
Jesus Christ!
Nobody else in the fairgrounds except for guards. Like some really drunk guard would come up and say, "Can I get a light? You have a light for me?
You have a lighter."
And that was my entire company out there. Or if I was back at the studio at the station that didn't go down, I was all by myself for 6 hours straight.
Yeah.
Remember one time, I'm going to broadcast naked, and I did.
Oh,
and I put my clothes back on because I got kind of chilly.
Yeah.
And like seconds later, the head engineer came in.
Oh.
Yeah. And he came walking by the window. I'm like, oh God, it was close.
Have a bathrobe.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't one of those things that I'd thought out to bring a bathrobe with me.
Well, you should have thought of it after the fact. I thought of it just now, and I'm probably never gonna have to do overnight radio.
No, yeah, that's not a thing anymore.
Yeah, it's not really a thing.
I wish it could be a thing.
I kind of do too.
Yeah.
I honestly I don't know if I would want to do that, but it just because it'd be so convenient for so many, or so inconvenient for so many other things I have going on in my life.
Right.
But the experience would be interesting at the very least.
Right.
So much less oversight.
Yeah.
At any rate,
Uh-huh.
you want to say goodnight?
Yeah, sure.
All right. So if you like this sort of thing, you should check us out on our social media page. We're on. Why did I say that so weird? We're on
Social
Facebook.
media page.
We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter.
Insta.
And you can especially check out our updates on Facebook and Twitter, and we'll always post new episodes there. You can share those with your friends if you think more people should be listening to it. If not, that's okay. We still love you.
Hey, next week, pick your beer right now.
Oh God! Oh no!
I have two that I want to do. One because of this one, and one because I just wanted to do it.
Oh boy! All right. So heads is A.
Okay.
No, I didn't.
I'm just gonna drop this
I
coin.
didn't flip it. It didn't count. I gotta put my beer down
right.
so I can center this on my thumb.
All right, and here he goes. And
heads.
Creators Extreme Aggression.
Okay.
That's the one I want to do. It's not their best album, but it's an album that's important to me, and I'll tell you why next week.
All right. Creators Extreme Aggression. And I think I've already decided ahead of time what, and I'm going to say it now so I don't forget it, because I feel like I will if I don't mention it. The album for the week after that, I want to be 6 Degrees of Inner Turbulence by Dream Theater.
Nice.
I feel like Dream Theater's kind of been on my brain.
Right. They're sort of on the edge of metal.
They're metal enough.
They're metal enough.
I have officially decreed they're metal enough.
I'm not going to argue.
All right. So, yeah, that's what you have to look forward to in the next couple of weeks. Creator, Extreme Aggression, and 6 Degrees of Inner Turbulence. An extremely long album by Dream Theater.
All right.
So thank you very much for listening to another episode of the Bronze Metalist Podcast. I'm Kale.
I'm OJ.
Congratulations.